Story 1. I had abandoned all my friends because of a manipulative ex who had too much control over me. After we broke up, I was suddenly alone with nothing. I took a deep look at everything, acknowledged my mistakes, and did what I could to fix things and move forward. Story 2. Whoever reads this, it doesn't matter how low you are in life. You have to believe that you are capable of coming back and getting the life you want and dream about. Trust me, it's all about yourself and how you get back up. It doesn't matter the failures and downfalls, even if there is no small win in view. The only option is to believe in yourself. If you do that, everything is possible. Look in the mirror and tell yourself, I can do anything. I am capable and I will succeed. God created the hardest lessons for his strongest soldiers. Story 3. I transformed my life in every possible way. I am almost 2 years sober from alcohol. I am grateful I woke up and did not make the same mistakes I had made countless times before. Story 4. I got really sick in my last year of university. I missed all of my classes, my insurance denied all of the medicine I needed, and I couldn't eat. I genuinely started thinking I was going to die, but I kept attending my classes remotely, explored alternative treatments, and received a lot of help from my boyfriend. By graduation, I weighed 80 pounds. I moved across the country for work, received proper help, and managed to get mostly better. I'm now happily married to that boyfriend, and we have a home and 3 cats together. It's the biggest turnaround of my life. Story 5. Postpartum depression. I always wanted to be a mom. I talked about it since I was a little kid. Then I had my son at 27 after getting married. It was harder than anything I ever imagined. He was colicky, and I had no help since my husband couldn't take leave, and I had no family. I planned to jump out of our second-floor window at around 5 months, but I asked for help the day before as a last-ditch effort. I leaned into the help heavily. I started taking antidepressants and became honest with my therapist. I hired a nanny to help me full-time for 2 months while I sorted out my mental health, which I acknowledge is a luxury I'm very grateful for. I also began volunteering as a coach at the local high school to regain some personal autonomy. I owe those girls my life for the sense of normalcy they brought me. I came out of it, thankfully. He's turning 2 in May and is my favorite person on earth. If anyone reading this is struggling, please seek help. You will come out on the other side. Story 6. Medical problems were followed by debt issues. I discovered that my family was unhelpful, with one sibling mocking me for having defaulted credit cards. The doctors informed me that I would be chronically ill from that point on. A couple of friends helped me. I relocated, paid some of the debt, and became healthy enough to work again. I had to cut off several family members. Life went on. Focus on distancing yourself from those who drain your energy. Story 7. When I came home from work, I found that my wife had taken her own life. I will let you know if I ever recover. Story 8. I got into a car accident that killed my sister, and I also had to relearn how to walk at the age of 17. It happened almost 10 years ago, and honestly, I feel like I am still recovering emotionally. I think therapy is a great option, as well as finding healthy coping mechanisms that have helped me. I refuse to be a victim, and I feel like I have always had a more optimistic mindset than the general population, which is one of my biggest strengths. I have always had a higher tolerance for stress and pain. It was somewhat comforting to know that I have already been through the worst part of my life at such a young age. Story 9. Living in a city halfway across the country, I was living paycheck to paycheck at a job I hated, with no friends or family in the area. I was in a very dark place mentally. The only thing keeping me from falling further was the uncertainty of what would happen to my dog. All it took was a random opportunity to transfer. I still wasn't home, but it was a 4-hour drive to better coworkers. Story 10. My son was murdered during a break-in while staying at a friend's house. He was shot in the face 4 times with a BB gun and stabbed 10 times. He laid on the floor for 30 minutes until his friend got home and called an ambulance, and he died at the hospital. Thankfully, the people responsible for this were caught and tried. While I am not an advocate for the death penalty, they received life in prison. How did I recover? I live in America, so I didn't I cried for an hour and then spent several hours replaying a level on a video game, absolutely slaughtering non-playable characters. I rage when I get angry and often cry myself to sleep. It's a little better almost 4 years later. I figure that by the time I die, I should be close to fully healed. Story 11. Around this time last year, I was working full-time and studying at night right after work. My self-esteem was so low that I thought I would never recover. 5 months ago, I decided to read the entire Holy Bible because I could not afford therapy and thought maybe God would help. 2 months in, I had read from Exodus to Proverbs, and my mindset about people and my interactions with the world changed drastically. I stopped seeing myself as lesser because I did not have a lot of money or had not attended prestigious schools. I started seeing others as equals, regardless of their social status. I began to recognize my own potential, and that is when life truly began for me. I am grateful for those difficult months because they shaped me for the future that is unfolding right in front of me. To anyone going through tough times, keep going. There is always a lesson to be learned during struggles. One day, you will thank yourself for staying strong and riding out those tumultuous waves. Story 12. I experienced crippling anxiety disorder unexpectedly. I used to think mental health issues were somewhat exaggerated. For about a year and a half, I dealt with intense intrusive thoughts and feelings. Finally, I decided to research and understand what I was doing wrong, and it turned out to be as simple as how I was reacting to my anxiety. Now, I hardly experience it. On my good days, I feel better than I ever have. I'm grateful for my journey because I became very self-aware of the many factors contributing to my anxiety. It was both the darkest and best chapter of my life. Story 13. I performed poorly in my first year of engineering back in 2004 and was asked to withdraw from school for a year. I was in a dark place for a while until I was able to speak with a counselor, friends, and my girlfriend, who is now my wife. My parents weren't very helpful, which is likely one of the reasons I ended up struggling initially. I found inspiration, started working, and saved money during my time off. I re-enrolled in engineering the following year but switched my focus from chemical to electrical engineering and worked hard. I earned my degree and even returned to pursue a master's degree. 21 years later, I am in a very good place, love my family, and enjoy my career. One of the main things I did was cut my parents out of my life, which was significant. Their toxic presence and years of emotional abuse were major hindrances to my success. I've realized the importance of talking to someone about your struggles. Therapy and counseling were instrumental in helping me get my life together and continue to succeed. They played a crucial role in my return to education and in my understanding that, just because they are my parents, it does not give them the right to treat me poorly. Story 14. Stuck in a relationship that didn't grow, along with feelings of depression, anxiety, and undiagnosed ADHD. I was also in another country. Thankfully, I found a way to escape the loveless relationship and move on. I became active, learned to enjoy being alone, rediscovered my love for reading, and was diagnosed with ADHD. I still struggle at times, but I am definitely growing. Story 15. Medical problems and mental health issues were significant challenges in my life. The prescription medications I was taking for my physical health were worsening my condition, so the first step was to discontinue them and find alternative treatments. It took a long time for the medications to clear my system, and during that time I was struggling mentally. I was not legally an adult, so I did not have a say in seeking mental health assistance. I started to engage in self-harm and felt like I didn't want to be here. Music became a source of comfort. For a week or two, I was alone in the house, which was not healthy, so my older sister took me to her community college. There, I was able to attend classes or explore the student center and campus. During our commutes, she played music and encouraged me to use the family laptop to search for more music from the artists we listened to. She motivated me to develop my own taste in music. Ultimately, it was my sister and music that helped me find hope. I continue to deal with chronic health issues and mental health challenges, but my situation has improved since that time. I am still here to share my experience, which I consider meaningful. While I do not always enjoy life on this planet, I have many more moments now where I do not hate every second I am awake. That, in itself, feels like a small miracle. Story 16. My ex-husband was having an affair, and when I found out, he ran away. I was left with a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. He lost his job for disappearing and for being drunk at work, and then I discovered he had forged my signature on our bank accounts. The house went with his job. In 24 hours, I became a single parent with no home and no access to money. I thought about suicide and taking my children with me, but I couldn't. I sold his car, took the money, rented a house, and started our lives again. I went back to college, worked cleaning houses, earned a degree, entered teaching, and raised 2 wonderful children. I don't know how I did it. It can be done, but you have to grit your teeth and make it happen. Story 17. I'm there now. From the outside, everything looks fine, but I'm so tired of trying. I desperately crave physical touch. I've opened up to multiple friends about it, even asking a few if we could cuddle. I'm not chasing sex, but I can see how that could be assumed to be an ulterior motive because it's so common. Crying myself to sleep every night is exhausting, and no one seems interested. I bet they would say they never saw it coming if I ended it tonight, despite my attempts to communicate my struggles. I got cheated on and have no desire to pursue a relationship just to be held. I want to be held because someone wants to. Why is that too much to ask? I'm tired of trying to help those around me when I feel so alone myself. I'm so tired. Story 18. When I was suffering from depression, I sought therapy. However, it was the daily routine of getting up to care for my cat that truly helped me. Story 19. I had a first-time home buying experience fall through. Life got hard, and it felt like everything was going wrong. I tried to run away to Canada, moved in with my parents for a year, and took some time to rebuild my life. Now, I live in a new town with my dream job. In 2022, I became interested in homeownership. I knew that the city I lived in wasn't feasible due to high prices, so I started looking in different towns within the same state. I found a wonderful starter home, a condo, 2 hours north for a great price. Everything was going well, and I felt like nothing could go wrong. I ended my lease, gave my notice at my old job, and applied for a new position in the new town. However, things gradually went downhill. About 2 to 3 weeks before my planned move, I received a call from the mortgage company stating that the Homeowners Association did not have enough money saved in reserves, making it too much of a financial risk to loan to me. I had to back out of the sale, which crushed me. Since I had nothing to fall back on, I still had to move. I was fortunate to find a nice, albeit expensive, apartment, but it involved a 25-minute commute to work. Speaking of work, I encountered a unique set of issues. I applied for the evening shift, which I preferred because of the shift differential. When I was contacted for an interview, I was told the position was filled. Then it wasn't, then it was again. There was an opening on the morning shift, so in order to have employment and afford the condo, I accepted that position despite taking a pay cut. On the 3rd day of this new job, it was especially chaotic. I ended up being left alone and overwhelmed. I had worked in the same field before, but their procedures were completely different, and I struggled. At this point, everything felt like it was going wrong. I lost out on an amazing home. I was away from my old friends, town, and job. Moving back was too expensive. I started a new job with less pay on a shift I didn't want. My living expenses doubled, and my commute increased significantly. I missed my old life and regretted everything about this move. I just wanted to escape. I lived about 2 hours from the Canadian border. Due to COVID-19, recreational travel was still limited. Nevertheless, I decided to try anyway. I drove to the border with my passport ready, explaining to the border patrol officer that I was traveling for recreational purposes. However, he bombarded me with questions like, "Do you have relatives in Canada? Are you bringing anything into Canada? And do you have a purpose for being in Canada?" I was so overwhelmed that I burst into tears and begged to turn around. They still had to search my car, but a different group of officers was more friendly, assuming I simply got turned around. They let me go back to the US, and I spoke with one last patrol officer who kindly asked if I needed help. I simply told him I wanted to go home. I drove back, sobbing. feeling like I'd disgraced myself at the Canadian border. I stayed in town for 7 months before moving back in with my parents for a year. I didn't attempt to run away again, but I continued to feel depressed, coping with fast food and shopping, which led to more financial struggles. I decided to try home buying one last time, but my options were limited as my net worth had significantly dropped. My parents offered a solution. While they couldn't help me buy a home, they could provide a room in their house rent-free as long as I needed. It was tough to admit defeat, but it was in my best interest to get my spending under control and rebuild my savings. I haven't fully recovered from the move. It still hurts to think about. However, I did recover after living rent-free. It was comforting to be close to my family again and to decide what I wanted to do with my life next. I now live independently, still close to family, and I have a job that pays well and offers a dream schedule. Story 20. I witnessed the accident that killed my girlfriend. A wrong-way drunk driver was involved. She had just graduated from college, and I was up for my first full-time teaching position at the university. I dropped out of consideration. I taught one course that summer and then stopped responding to emails and phone calls. After a few months of staying with my parents, they insisted I retreated to a small, dilapidated family home that I was very slowly renovating. I was grateful to have it. I struggled, but I was not alone. Family and friends kept me engaged and wouldn't let me withdraw entirely, which I attempted plenty of times. I drank a lot, oscillating between being active and engaged and being solitary and aloof. I smoked 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes a day and quit playing soccer and working out altogether. I dated casually after a couple of years, but nothing serious. In my mid-30s, I had no career and no savings, just scraping by, which was not a very serious option for women my age. There were starts and stops, forward and backward, year after year. It's been 10 years this summer. I took my first full-time job at a 2-year trade school last year. I've been dating a wonderful woman and getting to know her young children over the past year. I am still catching up on debt and addressing my dental and physical health, things I neglected for a decade. I am drinking less, smoking less, and am ready to quit. I am looking at the future again, wanting things for myself and others, and enjoying creating things once more. It was my support system that picked me up and saw me through, without judgment, pressure, or time constraints, offering compassion and patience. I will have to deal with the repercussions of my coping choices, but I consider myself fortunate, if you can call it that. I will always carry the scars of her loss. Always. But scars are proof of healing. Some wounds just take a long time to heal. Family, friends, a little luck and time. And some good books. Story 21. I can't remember the exact date, but my depression and suicidal thoughts were at an all-time high. I had an active plan to end my life and made arrangements to see some family for the last time. Seeing them changed my mind, though. It took years of therapy and electroconvulsive therapy to recover, but on that particular day, my family turned it around for me. Story 22. Severe depression and anxiety, accompanied by constant drinking and drug use, characterized my life about 3 to 4 years ago. When I was awake, I would consume Jim Beam and use cocaine. After going through several treatment facilities, I realized I was at risk of dying within the next year if I did not make significant changes. I also had a few hospital visits. I didn't need a doctor or lab results to understand my situation. I knew the truth myself. I entered therapy, found a stable job, began the right medications, and my fiancée moved from Florida to Georgia. We adopted a new puppy, and I quit drinking hard liquor and using drugs. Removing alcohol was pivotal, and once I stopped, my life began to improve. I lead a very happy life now. Story 23. I faced deep despair multiple times, confronting my inner struggles, overcoming my ego, and shedding my false self. From that darkness, I emerged as a new entity. Story 24. I feel like I have risen from rock bottom every few years. I'm not sure I have found the lowest point yet, but I think spitting out my broken teeth was probably a bad night. I was laughing because it was nothing compared to what was going on in my mind. Being told that I was found lying in my own vomit was another low point and a reality check that my drinking was becoming dangerous. Story 25. realizing my narcissistic partner of 30 years was slowly harming me verbally and mentally. He wasn't a well man, and I knew he would suffer from self-neglect if I left him. I was giving up my life for him. I can't describe the despair I felt one day, sitting on the floor, praying to someone or something to make things better. I'm in no way a spiritual person. He died 2 weeks later, and all I felt was relief. 2 years on, I'm slowly coming back to life, but it will take a long time for the memories to fade. Story 26. Standing by the river, I thought, if I get in and drown myself, all of this will be over soon. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and an anxiety disorder. Every day felt like a constant panic. My body and mind were exhausted, and I believed I would never see the sun shine again. It has been 5 years, and after a lot of therapy, I am doing well now. Story 27. The lowest point of my life was when I was laid off by my toxic boss, who fabricated mistakes and copied everyone in our department on the emails. When I quit, I learned from human resources that my supervisor had been telling everyone I was lying about my boss to protect himself. At the same time, I had an abusive ex, who was my director, retaliate against me after we broke up. He had been creepy and controlling, and my community rallied around me when I reported him to my local theater. They forced me to sign a non-disclosure agreement or be banned from the premises. I moved in with my boyfriend, and my parents warned me that I was headed for destruction in this life or the next. I was self-employed, traumatized, and alone, wondering if justice existed. For about 2 years, I smoked marijuana, watched television, and ate pizza. Then I discovered I had an autoimmune disorder and began to take care of my health. I cut out gluten and alliums, took an energy medicine class, got engaged, grew my company, and now I direct independent musical improv. What kept me going was my fiancé and the realization that even though I felt like I was going to die, I just had to keep moving forward. Slowly, things got better. When you abandon who you truly are, you will suffer. Story 28. I had 2 DUIs 1 month apart. It was a significant wake-up call regarding my struggle with alcoholism and marked a major turning point in my life. How did I recover? I stopped drinking alcohol and began focusing on why I allowed things to reach that point. Story 29. Living at home with an abusive father was difficult. I hid under the covers every night, cried myself to sleep, and wore long sleeves to cover the bruises. I recovered by leaving my house at the first opportunity and never looked back. I'm still in touch with him and have forgiven him for everything he has done, but it's easier to love some people from a distance. Story 30. Discovering that my wife had cheated on me and was planning to marry her affair partner was devastating. She stayed married to me only to continue sending him money. There were many red flags indicating that she intended to kidnap our son and flee the country. It has been a costly divorce. I cannot say that I am fully recovered, and I am unsure what that truly means, but I have found some ways to cope. Time, support from friends, therapy and medication, taking care of myself whenever possible through exercise, diet, and sleep. Story 31. I went swimming in the ocean once, then I went to shore and eventually home, which was at a higher elevation. Story 32. I discovered that my partner of 20 years cheated on me again, engaging in an online affair with a woman named Michaela Alloway, who often goes by MK. I sensed something was wrong. She did not seem mentally stable, and he appeared to be influenced by her. She took advantage of him financially as well. Eventually, he kicked me out of the house because I confronted her about her narcissistic behavior. Thankfully, my oldest daughter allowed me to stay with her. I struggled to eat for a week and had to leave my son behind due to my unstable living situation. Felt like the lowest point in my life. I found evidence of their affair online and saved all of their conversations, including pictures. She is also married. One day, I might send this information to her spouse to confirm his suspicions about her. I'm uncertain if she is still married to him, as she moved to another country with her son. I feel sorry for him. He cannot see his father. Story 33. My parents divorced, upending my life in every way. My beloved grandmother passed away, and my grandfather also passed. I lost my first girlfriend, all within about 2 years. What helped me through it was reconnecting with the relatives I had and focusing on self-preservation and self-improvement. Story 34. COVID lockdowns, and it's not even close. I had a large community group that revolved around public meetings. I was involved in several different sports and a few different community groups. I had moved to a new area and was building friendships with a variety of people. I had just started coaching a youth sports team. All of it was gone. Literally every single thing I valued all at once. All the sports stopped, all the community groups stopped, and several disbanded completely after months of lockdowns. The coaching ended, and it seemed unlikely I would be back there coaching. Friendships I'd taken years to build just sort of stopped. I lived in Toronto, where the most strict lockdowns in the world were happening. My favorite restaurant closed, the sports league I was in folded, my gym closed, and the local park had caution tape all around it. Even golf courses were closed all summer. Several of my close friends in the neighborhood decided fairly soon after the lockdown started that they were better off moving out of town because they could find more space by buying or renting a large house in the countryside far from the city. My friend group went into isolation. The government later said we could combine households with one other household to maintain friend groups, but everyone paired off with their old friends, and I wasn't included. There were videos of people I had met who said, "You should come up this summer to the cottage." But during the lockdown, they only invited their close friends, not the new friends or any extended groups. I saw videos and pictures of everyone at the lake while I sat at home. It was really awful. When I posted about this on a social media platform, despite saying I understood the logic of lockdowns and how they were affecting me personally, I received harsh comments such as, "Suck it up, snowflake," and "I hope your grandma dies of COVID," and similar remarks. I actually left the area after the second lockdown and went to stay with some family in the United States. I ended up leaving everything and moving there full-time. It was the best choice ever. Story 35. I recognized I had a severe problem with alcohol about 5 years ago. It escalated from weekend partying to over 10 drinks most nights, leading to several day benders, blackouts, and panic attacks when sober. I was scheduled to see a counselor on a Saturday and decided to have a last hurrah day of drinks the Friday before. That turned into being blackout drunk by 2 p.m. while watching A Star is Born. Inspired by the ending, I contemplated ending my life rather than trying to live sober. Had it not been for my wife coming home early from work, I would not be here to share this. I was placed on an involuntary psychiatric hold for detox but refused rehabilitation, which I now regret. It scared me sober for a while, but I eventually returned to drinking heavily. Finally, I went to rehab and committed to doing what was necessary to maintain sobriety. It has been a challenging few years. Story 36. I was laid off from my job, and my ex broke up with me within a month. I had just moved into an apartment closer to her. That was the lowest I had ever felt, and I decided to move back home the following year. I didn't have many friends there and felt alone. I stayed at my new job and apartment for a year, and then I quit and moved out when my lease ended. I am doing better now as I changed careers after moving back home and recently started seeing someone. We've been on 4 dates so far. Story 37. I got selected by a company, but after 2 days, they rejected me. I was very depressed, so to recover, I spent time outside my apartment instead of isolating myself in one place for too long. This helped me a lot, and in the end, I was able to recover completely. Story 38. When my father passed away, I was 25. He and my mother were alcoholics. He died of a heart attack at the age of 54. I had to struggle with taking care of my mother and my own substance abuse, but I kept working hard. I met my fiancée and became involved in work. I now have 2 jobs and my own company, but I lost my mother last year at 61. I take comfort in the fact that I bought her an apartment and had a caretaker for her. She was well cared for in her last months. I still struggle a bit, but I am also doing well for myself. I am in therapy, which I chose to pursue on my own, and for the last 6 months, I have started boxing 3 times a week. Life is starting to seem reasonable. Don't ever give up. Story 39. I am currently at the lowest point of my life, and I hope that moving to another city will help. But wherever you go, there you are. Story 40. Not sure if it is my lowest point, but losing my first dog is something I have not fully recovered from. I am not sure if I ever will. Story 41. Most of my life, I was a bit overweight and looked awful around a size 4. Now I am fit and consider myself a 10, to be honest. I want to do something, but I am scared. Story 42. I ruined my military reputation. I was assigned to another location and faced slander for 5 years over the most ridiculous issues. Fitness and personal time helped me cope. Dating was challenging, so that was not an option. Now I am married with 2 kids and have a great job. Story 43. I am at my lowest point, but I believe that jail detoxification and rehabilitation can help if you have a problem with drugs or alcohol. Takes a long time, but do not give up on yourself. Story 44. I experienced a car accident at the very start of my sophomore year in college. This was almost 8 years ago, and when I reflect on that difficult time, it's challenging to remember how I managed to overcome it. You have to remind yourself that you are doing better today than you were yesterday. Healing takes time. Story 45. Mine probably won't sound that bad compared to others, but I'll share my experience anyway. I was trying to do too much at once and wasn't figuring out how to make it all work. I had a full-time job, 2 very young children, and was in law school. My work started to suffer, and I experienced a challenging period of depression, so I took a medical leave to sort everything out. While I was on leave, I had to travel away from home for 3 days. When I returned, my wife told me that she and the kids did much better when I wasn't there and that they didn't really miss me at all. We separated for a while to figure things out. During this time, I was focused solely on law school. I had always wanted to be a lawyer, so this should have been my moment, right? However, the issue was that I loved my wife and missed my children. I started attending an intensive outpatient therapy program 4 days a week. During the therapy sessions, I realized that I had to choose between my family and law school, and no matter which option I chose, I couldn't guarantee a positive outcome. If I picked law school, I would likely face divorce and I might not become a lawyer. There was a possibility of not graduating or failing the bar exam. Alternatively, I could turn away from my dream career and still end up divorced. I had to decide where to invest my energy. Ultimately, I dropped out of law school and focused on rebuilding my relationship with my wife and children. I returned to work, but I was soon fired because my boss was unhappy that I had taken medical leave. They cited other reasons, but it was clear from my first day back that they were looking for a reason to let me go. I'm happy to say that my wife and I are doing great now. I love spending time with my kids, and it all worked out well in the end. Story 46. The lowest point was feeling like my body was working against me, with irregular cycles, failed attempts, and the endless heartbreak of trying to conceive with polycystic ovary syndrome. I recovered by shifting my focus from what I could not control to what I could. Tracking my hormones, advocating for myself with doctors, and finding a supportive community made all the difference. Story 47. I believe I am experiencing a significant issue right now. In a major bout of anxiety, I have not felt like myself in months. I feel dizzy, have constant bodily tension, heart palpitations, and feelings of depersonalization. I also have significant health anxiety. I am open to suggestions on how to recover. Story 48. Mine was in 1996. I was 29 years old, and my life had been progressively getting worse for the past 3 years. My business went bankrupt, leaving me heavily in debt, and I couldn't find proper employment. My marriage had broken down, and I was drinking and using drugs, clinically depressed and close to losing my home. It is difficult to say how I recovered. It was a long and gradual process. I found a job with a career path, met someone who was sensible and grounded, returned to the gym, reduced my drinking, and eventually completely eliminated alcohol and drugs. I also discovered Buddhism and Stoicism as mental disciplines. All is good now. I am the happiest and healthiest I have ever been, financially secure, and I have a decent career that I am winding down to retirement. Story 49. My partner had just left me, and I couldn't afford the rent, so I had to move in with a friend and his kids. My job was going nowhere, and due to my last relationship, I had no friends as he made me alienate everyone. I decided I needed to pick myself up and dust myself off. A friend suggested I travel. In the space of that week, I received a $1,700 tax refund, which was quite a bit in 2004, and I got a job in the industry I loved. Things picked up pretty quickly. Story 50. The divorce from my wife has been particularly tough for me. She is the love of my life, and after 28 years of not being around her, it has been very challenging. She is a wonderful woman and did nothing but love me. My bad behavior ended our marriage. I wish her the best and pray that she is safe. I really miss you, Deanna, and I am eternally sorry for dragging you down. May God bless you. Story 51. In 2018, I experienced burnout, struggled with schizophrenia and psychosis, faced financial difficulties, and was hopelessly in love in a bad relationship. I felt depressed, suffered from back and hip pain, and had an infection. I lost my job, and a close friend turned his back on me because I crashed too hard. All of this happened in the same week. I began my recovery with medication, rest, a few hospital visits, yoga, walks, and spending time with dogs. I also hung out with friends, sought help to create a 5-year plan to eliminate my debts, had talks with family, and accepted my situation along with my schizophrenia diagnosis. Took me 6 years to recover from that week. Sadly, I never regained the close friendship and lost the girl as well. Story 52. I have an unconventional story. A year ago, I became incredibly sick due to a severe autoimmune condition that became resistant to most treatments. I couldn't eat much for a month, and I stopped eating entirely for 2 weeks. I became unemployed, dropped out of college, and lived every day in unbelievable agony. I eventually ended up in the hospital after losing 15 kilograms and being unable to keep water down. Scans showed that my colon was eroding, with deep infiltrating ulcers approaching perforation. I won't go into too much detail from there, but it got grim. Then they decided to try a new medication on the market, and suddenly it worked and I began to improve. However, I was still deeply depressed and traumatized by everything that had happened. I spent every day in bed, basically catatonic, as I lost every shred of who I was before I got sick. Then I randomly saw that a video game I loved, which had comforted me during my illness, was going to lose downloadable content due to the 3DS server shutdown, as mentioned in a news article. A YouTuber I follow stated there was a way to preserve it, but it would require an insane amount of work in a short time. With nothing else going for me, I decided to attempt this seemingly impossible task. Suddenly, I had something to wake up for. I had something to focus on, and I worked extremely hard. I succeeded. The attention my project received led to starting my own YouTube channel, which reignited my passion and helped me realize that some parts of my personality hadn't been extinguished by my illness, and I could preserve that too. I work full-time again now in a happy long-term relationship, and I am doing the things I love. My illness has been in long-term remission ever since. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.